What do kangaroos and cars have in common?
This is Auto Collabs.
They're both pests.
They're both in one of the countries that Michael's podcast, The Dealer Playbook,
That's
is
literally
published
it.
in.
That's all of it. That's the whole thing. That's the joke. It was
That
nothing
when
better
people
than
meet
that,
me
yeah.
in real life, they know I can fit inside of both.
That's a good one.
Oh, no.
Oh, well, today's guest, the COO of SalesLogs, Michael Johnson, is an Aussie through and through, and he's bringing that energy into our world, in this ecosystem. It's been amazing.
You know, it's interesting because there are so few people that really understand the dynamics of some of the things that Paul and I throw out there into the world. One of those things being, we're like, we were thinking, this is back in the summer, we were thinking of doing a swag shop, but we were going to print bucks and then give people the bucks and they were going to buy them and we're going to have someone sponsor that. Sounds good? And someone threw down and said yes. And then later this summer, we were like, we should do a soccer scarf. Said nobody in auto. And so you know who we talked to? We were like, hey, SalesLogs. And they were like, huh. And we said, we are going to do a soccer scarf. You want to be on it? And like true Aussies, they said, absolutely.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, there's something about the energy. So I'm not a soccer fan.
Right.
But I don't have anything against it.
Rugby?
I probably less. I don't know. I mean, I did
He
watch.
doesn't like lacrosse either. I'm sorry.
Yo, look, Syracuse is like where lacrosse
Hockey.
started.
I mean,
Doesn't
I
mean I
get
like
it.
it.
There's a bias there. He was a, Syracuse clogging champion. So
Who was?
you. I've seen the photos.
Oh, really? Oh man,
Lord of
I don't
the
even know what you're
Dance.
talking about.
Well, enough about us. We're really excited to kind of hear how,
Please.
hear what is going on over there at SalesLogs and how a bunch of Australians have looked to serve us plain old American folk. And can't wait for you to meet Michael Johnson. Oh man, I am excited to hang out with Michael Johnson, and maybe not only because, but a major reason why I am excited about this is he is up in the future tomorrow. Paul and I are here on a Wednesday.
future.
And he is in Thursday in Australia. Michael, thanks so much for joining us on Auto Collabs today.
Awesome. Hello from the future. It's Thursday morning. It's great to be here, catch up with you guys. We're very excited. It's nice and early here. So what are we, just after 6 a.m. So we're ready for a big day.
I love it. That's awesome. Well, the first time I met you was actually back at Digital Dealer it was pre-pandemic. So, there's the blip there. I can't even remember what year. I think it was 2019.
2019.
And you all were a small booth in the back corner of Digital Dealer. And I was like,
I didn't even know this.
yeah. So
I didn't know you met in person.
Yes, so that's that's so that's the first time we met. We saw each other again at Digital Dealer this year, and so you all have been operating SalesLogs in Australia for the longest time, but are looking at entering this kind of U.S. market at this point. So, but I'd love to hear the story behind the story a little bit because you've been in automotive for quite some time.
Yes.
What? Because you had a retail journey in auto. Tell us a little bit about like how you came into that and what your retail journey was like.
Yeah. So I've always loved cars. So even at a young age, the guy who lived directly across the street owned the big dealer group in my city. And so I always was quite interested, what new cars did he have? And we were always sort of over there having a bit of a look. And I went into a retail telco business for about 10 years. And when I wrapped that up, it was like, okay, I'm going to do something different. I've always loved cars. I'm just going to start selling cars and just work my way into the industry. So, and the general manager who hired me at this BMW dealership as my first gig, he said, oh, like we're in the people business, it's just the medium of exchange is cars. And that kind of resonated with me because all through my telco journey, it was always around customer experience. You were always delivering that exceptional customer experience because what differentiates you from your competitors, right? And so that was the start of my journey. And my first month, like I sold 20 cars, and everyone was sort of like, whoa, like this guy's never sold cars before. And here he's pulling 20 cars straight off the bat, which in Prestige, I worked for BMW, was my first gig. And I then worked my way through a few different roles. So into a sales management role, and then into a general manager role. So it was, it's been an exciting journey. I then used SalesLogs as a customer for a majority of that time as well that I was in dealership land, and thought like, wow, like this tool saves me so much time. So that was where I met John, our founder, and he started selling cars straight out of high school as well. So, you know, we're both car people who have had a significant tenure in retail that have then moved across into this vendor space to find a tool and solution. So yeah.
We always love it when people have real world experience, and then either you have used a product in like the dealership, or, you know, just understand what it's like by living in both sides of the fence. So that goes a long way. Let's talk for a second, because I know a lot of the folks that are going to be watching this, listening to this, are not familiar with the company or the product. The people who are on the ASOTU email list are, because you've been promoted in some of the emails, and, you know, people are seem very interested in the product. But can you start by telling us a little bit? Let's get a little tactical, because we like to introduce, you know, our audience to the people and the personalities and the products, right? So I think your personality's coming through already. Yes. And I feel like we're just about to crack that can open. But let's talk about the product for a second, because it's important that everyone has some context. Can you just tell us quickly what SalesLogs is and the extent of the reach you have in the Australian market?
Yeah, so SalesLogs as a product is essentially it's your sales log. It's your daily deal book. We sit separate to the DMS, and we sit separate to your CRM, because we find that there's this gap in the process. That the DMS is your accounting system. The CRM's tracking all of your leads and inquiries and sales sort of process, right? So what do we do to track all of the deals that we've done? What growth do we expect? And all of that checklist of things, we do it in a spreadsheet, right? So we find all these spreadsheets. They're built by people in the business. So, you know, they're not data analysts. They're sales managers generally who are building these spreadsheets and tracking this data. So there comes with a lot of risk and complications with that. So we've built an online platform that's in the cloud. So think Google Sheets on steroids. Like, it's completely just set on fire and just with so much more features. So we've built out all of those things that become a problem or a challenge or still a restriction with inside those environments, and fix them. So everybody can see it. Give us one, like, what's the most used instance of your product? Like, give me like a real tangible use that people like rely on it for. Yeah. So sales managers are looking at, counting their gross and units and volume, what retail report information that they've done, and just basically tracking every deal from start to finish. What have we sold? What are we delivering? Especially in the current environment, we've got stock shortages, chip supplies, things like that. Oh, yeah. And the American market's now shifting that, you know, you're not walking in and buying a car and taking it out a few hours later anymore. You know, right. There's order pipelines now to contend with. So how are dealerships managing that pipeline to know who have we sold to, when are we expecting it to come in, and how are we communicating internally about those vehicles? So we track all of that as well inside the system. So
gotcha. That makes sense. No, that's a very practical and timely, obviously, use for it. Tell us about your customer base existing, you know, in Australia, because again, like, we want to give an idea for like the actual adoption of it for other dealers that might not be US dealers.
Yeah, so we work with about 700 dealers currently across Australia and New Zealand. So
how many dealers are in Australia and New Zealand?
I think there's about 12,000 or something.
Okay, I didn't.
Still a significant number.
Okay.
Are there really 12,000?
It seems like a lot more.
It seems like that seems
the US is like 16,000 in the US. It seems
maybe it's not that many then. Like there's still we've probably got about, I think we have about 20 to 25% of the market. Yeah, okay, so it's there's still a lot of opportunity, we'll call it.
Yeah.
So there's
he's on the metric system. Yeah. I'm just kidding.
throw numbers at me. It's too early in the morning for this.
He said numbers. That's for the data analysts.
That's why we have graphs in our software, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So we've we've got about 6,500 users signing unique every week. So we're seeing quite a number of people in our platform. Some people just sign in once or twice a week. Some people live in it. They're there all day, every day. Sales managers, stock controllers or inventory managers. They're the primarily the big users. You've got general managers and business owners who are spending a bit of time sort of having a look at the dashboards and the graphs. They'll sort of look at how's the business tracking and performing. We've got automated daily reports that come out just to keep everybody in the loop of where things are at. So
very nice. Very nice. So, okay. So we have this platform that kind of lives in this world between the DMS and the CRM for pertinent information that is like very real-time sensitive. It's literally decision-making information that you're providing, right? Like in real time. You have 6,000 unique logins every day. So people are relying on it. What do you hear? I asked you a specific use case. What is the biggest pain right now? Now, granted, markets could be a little different, but there's a lot of similarities, supply shortages. What is the biggest pain that new customers are coming to you to solve?
The transparency of data. So, a lot of new customers who come to us, they've got these spreadsheets, they've got data that they're tracking, and they can't share it with everybody, or there's limitations. People break spreadsheets all the time. There's so many formulas and things in the background that people have built out. You make one mistake of just deleting it and it breaks the whole system. Putting it in the cloud, so people are trying, they've got these monster spreadsheets, the size is getting too big, they're trying to migrate it into the cloud. They go and put it on things like SharePoint or Google Sheets, but then it gets too complex. And so they're trying to work out what is the solution for us to not have to spend hours and hours building and maintaining this thing. We just want our team to be putting the data in, tracking the information, getting the answers in an instant, not having to become data analysts and building these products.
Are you starting to see that there are like profit gaps that are found or filled because there's a reporting system like outside of the DMS, outside of where the accounting is getting done? Are people finding or discovering those gaps early enough to kind of like stop loss or increase profitability because of their ability to kind of track down trends sooner than like when accounting closes the deal?
Yeah, absolutely. Because we've got, the transparency around what is the forecasted growth. So if you've got a sales manager, telling their GM, I've got, X amount of gross, I've got $300,000 worth of gross covered so far this month. But then by the end of the month, if we end up only at 280, well, where is that $20,000 gap? And at the end of the month, that's too late to see. But as we're sort of tracking and delivering vehicles through the month and accounting or reconciling those deals, we're highlighting on every individual deal. Sales manager thought there was $3,500 in this deal. There was only $3,200 in the deal. Then identifying where the gaps are. You can then leave notes and comments inside our system. We've got automatic email notifications that come off the back of that to go, there was a variance and it related to this. So if we start to see consistent comments about the same thing, is that a training opportunity for that manager? Or do we have the right costs loaded in our DMS for pre-delivery charges and things like that? So when you see those comments, it enhances. Like I know I've experienced that personally myself. I had a sales manager once who was terrible at grossing up a deal, and forecasting was always telling me there was way more in the deal, like $2,000-$3,000 more every deal. And then we very quickly worked out that he just couldn't read the profit screen inside the system properly to know that this is actually the number that you should be counting.
Right.
So, and that's where we need to then train our staff, highlight the information, but also forecasting through. As we're tracking through the month, we want to know where is the needle? Are we on point or are we not? And keeping a close eye on that. And we need to know that now. It's no good when you're running a report that you're having to collate together at the end of the week or towards the end of the month from your DMS, which is looking in the rearview mirror. Right. It's what's happened. It's what have we closed off and done, and there's your report. So there's that gap.
Well, and the biggest interesting thing that I'm really intrigued about is this. You kind of threw this out there that people are dealing with, obviously, a large amount of orders or pipeline sales, and we start to, you're like, oh, we sold one today, right? You write it down, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, actually, that one's going to get delivered in 3.5 weeks when the truck drops it off. And so now you can actually potentially manage profitability in the future and now in a more accurate way, because you're looking at how we're trending and tracking over a certain period of months. And so there's it sounds like you're solving for that sort of forecasting too.
Absolutely. And this is where we're seeing that shift in the way that the US market is operating and how consumers are able to buy a car, not how they want to, because we're impacted now by stock supply. In Australia, we don't have local manufacturing. So if I wanted to order a car, we were waiting months already, even pre-pandemic. It was 3 or 4 months wait for those cars. So how do you manage to know, well, what have I sold? What am I delivering this month? What's going to carry over? What gross is associated with those deals? What F&I is attached to those deals? What revenue is coming in associated with it? But what trade-in is associated with that vehicle as well? Because we all need to inquire that inventory when it comes in. So the used car manager wants to know, what trades do I have coming in when, where that communication happens between those two, new vehicle and used vehicle managers. Because at the moment, we don't really communicate and say, hey, that trade-in's coming in on Friday at 4:00. Now our system is just unconsciously telling them, because the new vehicle manager or the delivery coordination is occurring around getting that new customer their new vehicle. We don't really care too much about the trading coming in because it doesn't impact my department.
Interesting. Man, I think of, oh my goodness. So like, let's say I got a Mercedes coming in off trade. I'm a Honda dealer. I know I'm going to have to do an oil change. I can go ahead and pre-order that Mercedes filter, and all of a sudden my speed, now you're talking about like speed to retail, which is also important because many franchise dealers are becoming much better used car operators, which means speed to merchandising is really important. And now on all of your trades, which are already quick turns into merchandising, you go even quicker. You could almost get that vehicle up like within hours of it being there, especially if it's kind of a frontline ready, because you know it's coming. You put it in the pipeline for detail. You put it in the pipeline for reconditioning. It's all there. Yeah.
It seems that, what you just explained as far as like what the just general environment in Australia is as far as needing to order and plan. It's like you've already played the game for so long that the U.S. market has to play now and is learning how to play. So it seems to me that you were like built for this time, right? Like there could be like this is a better time to come to market than it would have been in 2019, like to come strong. Because like you're solving the problem right now.
Yeah, it's a completely different conversation, and it's quite interesting when you say like 2019 versus to 2022, right? When I first met a couple of our dealers who came on board with us in 2019 after that first digital dealer, they're like, "How many carryovers have you got?" Oh, like 2 a month, and they're selling like 800, 1,000 cars, like. The top performing dealers in the country here are selling 200-300 cars a month. And I remember sitting at lunch at Digital Dealer one day, and these 2 ladies were talking, sitting next to me, and she's like, "Oh, I've been working with this BMW dealership. It's only small. They only sell like 100 cars a month. It's hardly worth my time." And I'm sitting there going like, if my BMW dealership was selling 100 cars a month, like I wouldn't be here. I'd still be working there.
Right. Wow. That's amazing. That's amazing. So let's do this. I think we talked about the product, right? And we get kind of a good overview. Give us an idea of like the personality of your organization. Give us some idea for the size and the scope and like what the mentality is inside SalesLogs, how you approach sales, how you approach customer service, because that is just such a big question mark. And I think a very, very important thing to dealers. Like, I know like I could turn the software on, but what's going to happen when I have questions? What's going to happen, when something doesn't go right or I need something changed? So give us a little overview. Like what's the attitude, mentality, and the personality of the SalesLogs organization?
Yeah, so for us, because we are car people, we get it. So when there's something pops up in terms of people go, "Oh, hey, I want to do this," or "This is the outcome I'm looking for," or "I'd like to see a report on a particular thing," we'll always take that feedback on board. And a lot of things are very easy for us to just build, develop, and deploy. So, for example, I had a meeting the other day with a Toyota dealership, and they wanted to look at a specific metric around F&I. So we didn't have that report built in the system. So I went, oh, we'll just go and build that for you. And 2 days later, there's the report. Just click here. It's built, ready to go. So of course, they're amazed with that. Our customers love our product. So we don't lock anybody into a contract. This is how much we believe in our product, that it will make your life better. There's no setup cost, and there's no contract term. If you pull the pin after 2-3 months, that's okay. We're okay with that. We get it, because our product needs to enhance your current process and take it to this next level, replace what you're doing currently. So we're car people. We get it. We understand when people ask things, and we can pivot and sort of move across. And because we're not a huge corporate organization, we don't have to jump through all these hoops. Talking to me and saying, hey, I'm looking for this solution, or I'm trying to do this. Can we build this feature? Between John and I, we're the ones on the front line making those decisions with our customers daily to go, yeah, I can see what you're trying to do. So we'll go off and plan that and build it. Because when we release functions and features, we release it to everybody, because it's a benefit. If you're asking me for something, it's important to you. There's probably another 10 people who also think it's important. It sounds like
you've built the data in an efficient way, where it all kind of sits in a warehouse, and it's just like, oh, that's an insight someone wants. Whoop, you just pull it out, and it makes sense. That's amazing. I want to ask 2 questions. One is, so you guys are coming to ASOTUCon, that's just a big deal to me.
By the way, let me interrupt this, because I have something really special sitting right here.
There it is. Look at that. Hey. Well, first of all, you all threw down with us and are hosting the swag with us, which is,
I love it.
Like, initially I was like, Paul, we should do a scarf, right? Because I'm a big soccer fan. And then some Australians, which
happen to know a thing or two about football.
Happen to know a thing or two about soccer. We're like, hey, we'd love to partner. And you guys, it just made a whole bunch of sense.
And I can't. So I didn't grow up watching soccer, and Kyle has kind of been my first touch into the game and understanding the culture and the community that actually happens around the game. And so when it came time, this is the very first soccer scarf that's ever been around my neck. And honestly, I'm in love with it.
Excellent. Yeah.
That's amazing. But you told me something else that I think that you might be bringing. Now, I might be committing you to something more. But you sent to me, you said, I think we're going to bring some, I think they're called Tim Tams. Is that, or Tim?
They are.
Okay.
Tim Tams.
So which is amazing. And I don't know how many you're going to bring, or people might be knocking down the doors.
What is it?
To find out.
TIM?
TIM.
Yes.
Talk to us about what a Tim Tam is and why.
Now we're getting into the real conversation.
So it is a chocolate biscuit, or you might call it a cookie, I guess. It is absolutely delicious, and I'm gonna bring quite a few. So there should be plenty. Provided I don't have any issues at customs.
Yeah. Smuggle them in. We're gonna get a call. I'm gonna have to pick you up. We're gonna have to pick up Michael from customs. We're gonna are you gonna claim this guy? Right, he's stuck here in the Philadelphia airport.
Yeah, and it'd be like, what do you need all of these biscuits for? We've got food here, right?
Very hungry.
Very, very hungry. That's great. And then my other question is a lot more intentional on what specifically a lot of dealerships here are talking about right now, which is not just this inventory squeeze, which we'll be talking about, but there's been a lot of conversations about what's happening at an OEM level in Australia, and I'm sure some of your dealers are starting to deal with some of the conversations that are coming out about how franchises are organized, how OEMs are relating to dealers, and just wanted to kind of see, have there been insights or conversations around that, and how are dealers approaching that conversation with the OEMs in Australia? Because I know that there are a few OEMs that have started to push the boundaries of those relationships, right?
we started to see a lot of the shift around this agency model with EVs coming out. So we saw a few brands going, okay, you can have the full electrified version of this particular vehicle, but it doesn't count to your retail targets or basically your OEM numbers. So they were doing delivery on behalf of. So there was a couple of brands that were doing that specifically for their electric vehicles. And now, of course, we're seeing one particular manufacturer, Mercedes-Benz, that you wrote about the other day, off the back of obviously the article, and there's a court case and everything going on here at the moment. A lot of it is just people sitting back watching to see what happens with this particular example, because it's going to set the precedent, right, of where dealerships are going to go in terms of their relationship with the OEM, and what that looks like. The dealerships had to sign their agreement. They were down to the wire of sign today or take your sign down tomorrow morning kind of thing. Wow. So they didn't really have a choice. They had to just jump on board and go, well, we've spent all of this money on, facilities and brand and, loyalty in our community, to then kind of feel like they're handing that over to the OEM and going, well, this is kind of yours. Huge impact with another brand, Honda, for example. They changed to agency model last year. Their sales have taken a big dive, which they were expecting. They were reducing that anyway as part of that plan. But what sort of happened off the back of that is dealers then were no longer dealers. So with the transition with Mercedes-Benz, every dealer moved through into agency. They didn't take anybody off the list and go, you're no longer going to be a dealer. Honda didn't do that. So that was where there was a big change. So, long time Honda dealerships, 30, 40, 50-year dealers, no longer dealers, weren't invited along for the ride. Whoa. So, so that's also another court case that's sort of going through, because of course there's all that goodwill associated with it, where those customers now get directed for service, because of course they were then told, oh, that service center has closed.
So where are people getting their Honda serviced?
Well, they're an independent dealer now, so they're still open. They can still service that particular customer's car because they're in their database and everything. So, but they're an
independent. They're a used car dealer at this point.
How about warranty work?
Well, they wouldn't be able to do warranty work because they're not a dealer. Wow. So, so it's.
Wait till Benstock hears about this.
Yeah.
No, I obviously I don't want to put all the pressure of what do you think about it? That's not the idea, but I think, you obviously are connected to 700 dealers that are going through this. They're watching their friends that are down the street go through it, or they might be experiencing it on their own. And, I just think that there's wisdom in understanding that this is a reality across the world in developed countries that have the same leadership. It's not like, the Honda leadership in Australia doesn't talk to the Honda leadership in the US at any point. And so being cognizant of those changes and how they took place, I think is really important for us to understand. And whether it's a 6-month timeline for US dealers or 3-year timeline or 10-year timeline, that's a reality happening at the OEM level that we just need to be cognizant of. And so to hear that firsthand experience of, it's happening to dealers in our network, and it's happening, we see it and we know what's happening. These people are becoming independent dealers overnight almost. It's a wild deal. So
we had GM exit from the Australian market. So that, they exited from right-hand drive vehicles, which of course that was a bit of a shock, because Holden as a brand, it's iconic, Australian brand, the Holden Commodore. I remember as a kid that you either had a Falcon or a Commodore. That was the two car choices, Ford or a Holden. And when local manufacturing exited, but then when Holden exited, the market of right-hand drive, and now we have GMSV, which is the special vehicle. So we see some Silverados, starting to get around and things in imports, but it was quite a change to sort of see that shift out, and of course that caused some waves and sort of upset losing that sort of brand, and now going down this path of agency models with other brands. And we saw one customer, they had 3 Honda dealerships. They weren't invited along for the ride. They had to close all 3 Honda dealerships because they're just downsized. And we're talking about metro dealerships as well, not like they were in country regional areas. They were metro dealerships and just went, no, we don't need your locations anymore.
Wow. Well, look, I think that everyone who watches this is going to be excited to meet you in person, and not just for the Tim Tams. Not just for the Tim Tams. He's going to have a big trench coat going through security. And he's going to have Tim Tam. Full of Tim Tams are going to be falling out as he walks along. I think that people are going to be very intrigued to learn more about what's going on in the Australian market, but also to learn about the product, because you're solving so many problems that U.S. dealers are just trying to wrap their arms around for the first time. So thank you so much for being in the ASOTU community and being a part of ASOTU and being a collaborator. But also thanks for giving us some of your time today. I can't wait till we can jam in person.
It's a big deal.
Yeah, pleasure. Yeah, it's not long to go. I'm almost like doing the countdown time.
Yes, absolutely.
On the plane to head out there. So not long to go. Looking forward to catching up in person. Thanks so much for your time today.
Talk to you soon.
Thanks. See ya.
It's really easy. I mean, coming from Canada, I find it really easy to kind of get sucked into the American vortex where it's like, oh, this is the way the industry works. When you meet American industry professionals, sometimes we speak as if this is just the way things happen all over the world. And of course, there are some similar threads, but there is nuance, there is difference. And I think this conversation really kind of underscores that. Australia is dealing with some really interesting context and nuance that Canada's not dealing with, or America's dealing with something that they're not dealing with. And I think that's the power of what we're working on here in this Auto Collabs is bringing in as many vantage points as possible. So I thought that was really interesting.
Well, and what's so cool is that actually something that they've dealt with for quite some time in needing to order inventory and not having a lot of home, production in-house essentially in Australia, is that they've managed their inventory and managed profitability differently, which is exactly the way that auto dealers in the US are starting to have to deal with that. And so there are learnings that go both ways, right? There are maybe the franchise system is really good and should be passed on to other countries. And so there might be other countries that kind of look and go, hey, actually they are doing it really well over there in the US. We got to still figure that out. And then we can learn from inventory management strategies and all of that from potentially other countries. And I think, what Michael and his team at SalesLogs are doing and allows us to learn some of those dynamics in a way that has a perspective not based on, oh, we just have to figure this out. Right. Oh, no, it might have actually been figured out by someone else, and we can copy that to Jim McKelvey's point, innovation stack that's already been led.
Yep. I remember hearing a couple of years ago was the first time I ever heard that, in Europe and Australia, a lot of people order cars. It's more common for someone to order a car and wait 60 to 90 days. And I remember thinking how ridiculous that sounded. No one's ever going to do that here, ever, right? And now we're faced with the fact that we are dealing with that, and we'll likely do a lot more of that in the future. Now, look, it'll balance out a little bit, but I'm so excited that SalesLogs and Michael are bringing all that over to say, no, actually, this is how it works really well, actually in your favor and in the customer's favor, now that the customer mindset has been a little retrained. And look, I'm just really excited for the moment he gets that football scarf, we'll call it, around his neck. And I'm excited for the industry to meet him because he's just a great guy. So on behalf of Kyle Mountsier, Michael Cirillo, and myself, thanks for listening to Auto Collabs. Welcome to Auto Collabs.
Why are we recording?